And now we'll hear from Lane Crockett. Lane is General Manager for Australia and Pacific from Pacific Hydro, which is an Australian-based renewable energy company with wind and hydro operations and interests in geothermal and solar developments. Pacific Hydro is also a long-standing supporter of the Foundation, and in particular our work on the greening agenda and also the work with Brazil. Thank you, Lane.
Thank you. Undoubtedly, one of the most hotly contested and much debated issues around economic reform in Australia recently has been the introduction of a price on carbon. But politics aside, you could define much of the discussion as being dominated by a glass half-empty perspective. There is no doubt that the cost of certain goods and services that have a high carbon footprint will go up as they take into account the full cost of their production and distribution. But over time, this will create structural change in the economy as Australia, like many other nations, including our largest trading partners, moves to clean energy systems. But what has been missing from this discussion is the glass half full perspective, where this global structural shift creates new opportunities for the Australian economy to benefit and grow. Australia has created for itself a global economic advantage through its natural resources, together with hard work, ingenuity, and the entrepreneurial spirit. While our prior wealth has hinged on the exploitation of natural resources in the form of minerals and fossil fuels, Australia's future economic wealth depends on the extent to which it can exploit its access to other natural resources, such as renewable energy. Moving to clean energy systems not only contributes to our fair share of emissions reductions, but also reduces the substantial health burden from pollution. Pacific Hydro believes that by applying the same characteristics of hard work, ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit, that we can maximise the economic benefits of our many clean energy and carbon abatement resources that we have in abundance. In short, we have the opportunity to become the region's carbon sink. Many nations do not have the opportunities that we have. If we take, for example, Japan, it's currently in the process of closing down its fleet of nuclear power stations, but lacks the landmass and natural resources to significantly increase its renewable energy base. Not only will Japan need to import energy, but it will need to import carbon abatement. And Australia can sell them both. In Australia, we have a vast landmass that is drenched in solar energy, buffeted by consistently strong winds, and has a space for extensive carbon cropping. Our uranium-infused rock can provide stable geothermal power, and being girt by sea, we have more opportunity for wave and tidal power than any other nation on Earth. Most of all, we have the people and technological capabilities to maximise these natural resources in the same way that we have maximised our mineral resources. We are at a turning point where we can choose to either ignore these emerging opportunities or grasp them in both hands and maintain our place as a global resource power.
Thank you, Lane. Now, our next speaker represents the Climate Institute, which has been an active contributor to the Foundation's work for some years now. John Connor is here with us today. John is CEO of the organisation. And John, if you could now provide us with your thoughts in relation to the issues at hand, that would be greatly appreciated.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Chairman, Secretary-General, honoured diplomats and fellow citizens. I toured China with the Global Foundation in September last year, and together we visited Tianjin, an eco-city for some 350,000 people, which is emerging from the polluted salt pans and wetlands, which saw its first residents move in just last month. Green urban growth is key not only to greening Asia and the planet, but it's also central to China's 12th five-year plan. And vitally, it's not just about green fields development, but it's also about redeveloping cities and urban redevelopments, not unlike the Dockland site here where we are sitting today, with many green buildings and much commercial Australian experience. China's cities have just become home to 50% of its population and is on track to house 80% of the population by 2050. This will and must create vast opportunities in clean tech, clean energy and clean food services and delivery. China's leaders are preparing for this urbanisation by setting goals for its cities and in its latest five-year plan, which has stood out from previous plans with its emphasis on carbon dioxide emissions reduction and pursuing active yet prudent urbanisation. This plan identifies 7 strategic industries that could drive healthy economic growth while reducing China's dependence on environmentally destructive industries and fossil fuels. These are smart grids, energy efficiency, green buildings, information and communication, low emissions transportation and logistics, resource recovery and environmental protection. Part of China's strategy to reduce its energy consumption by 16% from 2005 levels in 2015, which is a very ambitious goal, involves reducing the energy demand from its buildings, which currently consume about 30% of China's electricity, and they want to do that by constructing green buildings and improving the energy efficiency of existing buildings in their cities. Now, China's cities are also the testing ground for some 7 pilot emissions trading schemes, which is matching growing action across Asia on policies that constrain carbon, price carbon, incentivise renewable energy and/or drive energy efficiency. This action is ranging from India and Japan's levies on coal to Thailand's top runner energy efficiency program to emissions trading schemes emerging not only in China but so recently passing the South Korean Parliament just 2 days ago with their emissions trading legislation framework. Now, countries, of course, are doing this not just because of concern about climate change, nor even of concerns about energy security, energy independence and air pollution. These are important drivers, economically and politically, but they're also doing it because they are determined to prosper in the challenges of this century. This is a century where a number of trends are converging, highlighting the urgent need to build a fresh vision of prosperity amongst the constraints on natural resources we encounter, but also the constraints on skilled workers and, of course, on greenhouse or carbon emissions. That this century will not only be the Asia-Pacific century, but also the carbon-constrained century has been recognised by those well-known greenies at BHP, at KPMG, at GE and banks like Westpac and Deutsche Bank, amongst many others. Just in recent weeks, there's been 3 reports released. KPMG released an analysis of 10 megatrends driving global business, of which climate change was top. Deutsche Bank released an analysis of policies ranking countries with the best implementing policies that include market-based constraints on carbon as well as energy efficiency and renewable energy investments. Last month, global industrial giant GE, along with my organisation, in our Global Climate Leadership Review, which was supported by Pac Hydro as well, we launched an updated Carbon Competitiveness Index tracking progress from 1995 of G20 countries. Australia was the only one of those countries to have gone backwards since 1995 and is trading behind Asian partners in Japan, South Korea and China, and behind Brazil as well, Ambassador. Our competitiveness, as well as our credibility in providing clean tech, clean energy and clean food to Asia, will be handicapped if we don't get on with the job of constraining carbon, incentivising renewable energy and cutting our energy wastefulness. Greening Asia and the planet as we surge from 7 to 9 billion people in the next few years will need a turbo boost in carbon, natural resource competitiveness and productivity, but also in cooperation. There is cooperation potential that's coming out of the UN climate talks in Durban, and we need to do more there. While nations jostle for competitiveness in that burgeoning clean tech and carbon markets, we need to do work, and Australia can do that by in maintaining momentum and building ambition by signing onto a second Kyoto commitment period, but also regional emissions trading coalitions with our carbon markets. Greening Asia and the planet will need a revitalised approach to competition and to cooperation. It will need a fresh vision of prosperity and will also need success from endeavours such as these from the Global Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Very interesting, and thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to kick off the Q&A session, and I'd like to start with Lane Crockett. You say that Australia has the opportunity to be, the global green power. We're uniquely positioned in the region. What sort of initiatives or joint ventures, projects would you like to see happen in that sort of zone?
Well, I guess for us to be able to, I actually said regional rather than global, but I guess what we see as being most important is the fact, the need for a stable investment environment. So if you have the frameworks and the arrangements such that the trading partners can both seek abatement opportunities from you in a way that is good for investment, and also having the framework here in Australia so that you have confidence in the long-term investment of infrastructure, because infrastructure lasts for, well, hydropower stations, Pacific Hydro owns one that's 100 years old, so it is not short-run infrastructure. And if those things are in place, that will be the main factor that will allow the investment and then the opportunities to occur. You say stable investment environment. Are you talking about you'd like to see policies at a federal, state level? Is that what you're talking about there? Yes, there's two parts to it. It's what we do in Australia and then how we link to either emissions or trading schemes overseas. So John just mentioned that Correa kicking off an emissions trading scheme starting in 2015, and that is the time that the carbon price in Australia is set to move from a fixed price to a tradable price. So you would imagine there would be able to be some linking in between the two countries, which offers fabulous opportunity here in Australia. Unfortunately, if you have a political situation where it's either not bipartisan policy or legislation, and there's threat to that legislation, that causes a massive problem for investors. Thank you. Thanks, Lane. I'd like to throw it open to the floor. Is there anyone there that would like to ask a question, kick off? I can see a hand down there at the back.
Question for Lane. My name's Cole Stimson from Implementum. I don't disagree with the economic benefits of being the carbon sink, if you like, for Asia. But what do you think the community and social benefits of potentially laundering Asia's dirty carbon dollars in Australia are? Okay, well, I think firstly you would say that for us to be selling a large amount of abatement overseas, to be able to provide energy overseas as well, as you sort of say, laundering it. Well, first thing is that you've got to get your own house in order, so that what I'm suggesting is above and beyond what we need to do in Australia to make sure that we're meeting targets that are acceptable and meeting what Australia's obligations are under international arrangements. So I'm talking about an opportunity above and beyond what Australia should do anyway.
Thank you.